CIA and Harvard's Murray ultraed Kaczynski into the Unabomber. Did SSRIs and AIs mind rape Uvalde Ramos into a dress-wearing demoniac? Does FBI's behavioral science unit analyze or action now? Ukraine is America's biolab. As Zelensky's presidency was a rehearsal for Pedo Joe's, so is Ramos for Gen Z. Deep state demons training American teens into self-castrating. But as the Phoebes ignored FC's behavior for 17 years, they've not only ignored but rejected themselves even longer. Anti-terrorists have become the terrorists, targeting Catholics and constitutionalists, instilling obedience through fear, or at least trying to. But the new tyrants have forgotten the lessons of the legions. It didn't end with just another crucifixion at Golgotha. The Paraclete protects us, but woe and doom unto you, baby killers and child rapers. When Americans realize what you have done in Ultra, Ukraine, and Uvalde, they'll string you up from street lamps. I'm a retired soldier, special agent, and spy, turned whistleblower warrior. Served and sabotaged, rejected and redeemed, failed and forgiven, betrayed and saved, rejecting revenge, humbled and blessed, repurposed in redemption, as chaplain, leader, teacher, and truth teller. Now America's intelligence officer, following God, leading my family, and any that choose to join on our long Trail of Tears walk to freedom. Welcome. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. Welcome, everybody. Big show today and special guest. So this is Paperclip Ultra Whistleblower, and my thoughts on the Secret Service response from the Correspondents' Dinner. Now, I put out a special Sunday special, so if you haven't seen that, please go look at that, but I will recap that, as I'm sure some of you hasn't seen that. And yes, there are assassination anomalies, which I'll get into in a second. And then, is America MK Ultra via mass media today? That's something we will ask our guest, which is Cathy O'Brien. She is a sex traffic survivor and author. And she was the final keynote speaker, where I kicked off a keynote speaker for Team America Iowa a while back. So again, to go over my comments from Sunday on the Correspondents' Dinner shooting, are certainly anomalies that Trump did not attend the Correspondents' Dinner in 2016 because he saw them all as enemies, but he attended this one. This is also famously known by Secret Service agents as the Hinckley Hotel, because this is where Hinckley shot Reagan. So the Secret Service know this hotel backwards and forwards. And it seems that security might have been a little light, given that the entire chain of command was there. So you could, if there was a bomb or something, take out the entire chain of command. But other anomalies are that just as crooks appeared in a BlackRock commercial, if you recall that, and Ruth was filmed in Newsweek in 2022, and of course he was posing with every Democrat you could think of. Cole Allen appeared in an ABC News report back in 2016. That tends to look like mass media MK Ultring, but that's something that we will ask our guests later on. But I do assess, as someone who's done a lot of dignitary protection. In fact, that's how I got into doing this, is I was first doing dignitary protection for Tammy Bruce, Breitbart, Sheriff Arpaio, Senator McCain, many other luminaries. And then eventually I started guesting radio and stuff and TV, and then eventually started speaking. But I always joke with the bodyguards now when I'm backstage and saying, watch out, this is how I started back here like you guys. And they always get a laugh out of that. But anyway, very familiar with dignitary protection. And this attempt is different than the other attempts. So if you recall what I said about Butler and the Trump golf course is those certainly look like the government was in on it from my point of view. The Secret Service are just not that incompetent. And the fact that there's somebody hurting the photographers to photograph Trump as the crane lowers the flag in place. And most significantly, his time on the X there is nobody lets a principal stay on the X that long. Certainly looks like all of that was staged. And so I continue my conclusion that the government was in on the Butler attempt. Certainly looks like that with the golf course attempt too, that this guy got in there with a rifle, clown, and he had been associated with Ukraine. If he's associated with Ukraine, then that means associated with the CIA. So again, that looks like government was in on it. It's very difficult to determine if the government was in on this or this was really a legitimate lone wolf attempt. As far as the security goes, the security was really adequate. The performance was fine in my estimation. I know some of my friends, such as Michael Adams, disagree with me on that, but I don't think they've done my level of dignitary protection. The guy got the guns into the hotel by checking in, probably earlier. It's hard to do the sweep for that big hotel, other events going on. Then he comes sprinting through the checkpoint. There are some uniformed cops looking the other way. That's very typical if you use uniformed cops. When I would be security for events, the event organizers would always want to have cops. I'm like, you don't really want cops. They're not, most of them do not have dignitary protection training. What they do is stand around like those guys were doing, and they look the wrong way, and then they want a picture with the principal. They don't spread out. They don't quadrant the room off. They're good for traffic control. They're good in case you got to do some kind of law enforcement. But unless they are trained, and this is no knock on them, they're not trained to do this, then they really aren't very effective for dignitary protection. There are multiple circles, usually at least 3. And so you put the less trained guys on the outside. Looks like that's what happened. So the guy comes sprinting past the uniform guys, also plainclothes guys. That's probably a Secret Service guy. He's not going to be a tier 1 Secret Service guy because the tier 1 guys, the A team, are going to be around POTUS, President of the United States, and Vice President of the United States, the V POTUS, and the others. And each one will have their package and their teams. The biggest fault I really see is when the perp comes sprinting past whoever the plainclothes guy is, probably Secret Service guy. He goes to his last resort, which is his handgun, after the guy passes him, as opposed to just tackling him, which if he's a Secret Service guy, he should know better. But he was surprised. He's probably not that experienced, but that's actually why the Secret Service used to see him. If you can see my hands here, this is where my handgun martial arts students put their hands. So you can go up and grab somebody, or you can come down to your weapon as well. They still go behind the hip for the most part. But now they're kind of doing this hand on their jackets. I don't like that as much because of adrenaline lock can happen, although it shouldn't happen with them. But he should have tackled the guy. That's something that would have been better. But guy was sprinting real quick, maybe firing. So not a big deal. Also, the protection package worked. Didn't get to Trump. Didn't get to anybody. It looks like there was crossfire. And a lot of armchair people and people who watch too many movies who haven't done a lot of shooting, as I have. I was a primary fire instructor for DEA forever. My warrior school had tactical training company had contracts with all the military branches, units, not individuals, units, and all the intelligence agencies. And I judge everybody's performance okay, but it does look like there was crossfire. Crossfire or friendly fire, green on green, blue on blue, is a constant. It always happens. The more professional should be aware of that, but it certainly looks like the officer that was hit in crossfire, but that is not uncommon. So as far as everybody's saying, I know there's a big CIA guy saying this was a big failure. I saw another Secret Service guy saying they should rethink their procedures. But basically, their performance, I thought, other than that, was adequate. Once you get into the room, you'll see Trump is slow to react. That's because he doesn't really hear it. So people haven't experienced gunfire inside rooms. But from one room to another, you will almost not hear gunshots. And if you notice, you'll see the back of the room react first. And so that's very natural. If you haven't been around gunfire in rooms, then you don't know if you only heard gunfire on ranges or whatever. But Secret Service comes in pretty quick. There is one thing I pointed out that I don't think anybody else pointed out, which I think is pretty crucial. And people were saying, how come they're getting Vance out faster than they're getting Trump out? Is that some kind of plan to let Trump get killed? And this is why I did the Sunday special, which you can go look. Is what happens on these high-profile details is the regular guys, these special agents, because United States Secret Service are special agents, they're 1811s, are working their detail. They're out in the cold, they're working midnight shift. But when an event comes along like this, where it's tuxedos and wine, and you get maybe photographed with the press, because the press, it's the correspondence dinner, then the group supervisors, the assistant special agent in charge, ASACs, the special agent in charge, SACs, come in and say, hey, we'll take this detail over for you. And that's what I think looks like happened. In fact, there is an old photograph of me that was in U.S. News when I seized 2,000 pounds of cocaine early, and all the bosses are sitting up there, and I'm off to the side. So that's very typical. So I think they were slower because they were older. And if you look at the Secret Service that comes to Trump, they are older. They got some weight on them. They look like bosses. So I think that's what happened there. Nothing nefarious about it. They pause. That's okay. They're assessing the threat. They start to move him off the X pretty rapidly. He either falls down or is trying to help Melania or something. They get on top of him. That's fine. Move him off. So as far as the performance of the security package around the event, I don't really see any serious problems. I pointed out a couple things there, but that stuff happens. These guys are not supermen, and everybody who watches these movies, I've taught tens of thousands of people how to shoot. Everybody comes out and shoots too fast because they watch movies and they think they can shoot like that. I'm like, you got to slow down. You can't do everything you need to do here at that speed. So I think people have unrealistic expectations because they watch movies, and movies are not like real combat and real gunfights at all. So only real thing is Secret Service guy could have tackled him instead of drawing his weapon. The bosses could have let their principals, the regular team, be in there instead of taking over, especially with the whole chain of command there is what I really saw. But the protection package worked. And, those are minor issues, but I point them out just to say this doesn't look like this made a planned event. Now, was it planned beyond that? Difficult to say. I've already talked about the anomalies, that all three shooters had publicity, and that goes into the MK Ultra via mass media that we will get into later. It is interesting that it's the Hinckley Hotel. Even Hinckley said, "Wow, it's the same hotel where I shot Reagan." So those are interesting. I don't know that they constitute a setup, as I think Butler was, and I think the Trump golf course was. This may be actually a lone wolf. I am unsure about that. One other thing I got to mention is Netanyahu comes out and said Netanyahu or a double or AI. So I'm not seeing the Netanyahu being debunked as AI lately on X. So I'm unsure if, I said before he was dead or coma or missing. I'm not sure if he's back or not, because I haven't seen those debunkers as before, because it was pretty simple, 6 fingers, pockets disappearing. But Netanyahu's famous quote was, "We condemn any violence against political leaders." And my head about exploded because, such a hypocrite, because, Netanyahu and Mossad, that's their trademark, is that's all they do is kill everybody, especially with the Iranian diplomats as well. But there was an Iranian woman arrested at LAX last week for trafficking drones and bombs, and that is Shamin Mafi, who is living in Los Angeles, and she's charged with 50 USC 175 for violating the International Emergency Economic Powers Act by facilitating illegal export and training of Iranian-made weapons. And so that just goes to show that it's not just the Iranians are the good guys or the white hats. They have done, terror. They have done some of that, but not on a large scale. And Hamas hasn't done anything. They are not the boogeymen that they are being made out to be by the government and the mass media, certainly. And there is a indictment of a Fauci advisor, and this is what's his name here? David Morin's a longtime senior advisor to Anthony Fauci at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, indicted. So it's great that there's an indictment because of the democide by the bioweapon. But is this significant? I don't assess it as significant. Why? Because since Fauci is on record perjuring himself against gain of function, which means it's a bioweapon, before Congress, you don't need a guy like this. So normally you'd indict a guy like this, then you'd get him to flip and give you Fauci. That's how it's done. That's how I did it with dopers. Okay. From the 2,000-pound cocaine seizure, I ended up with multiple seizures later, or from a rather 4,000-pound marijuana seizure. I flipped that truck driver. He gave me multiple 100-kilo cocaine seizures and all up the whole chain. That's what you do. We don't need to do that with this guy because Fauci's already perjured himself, on video in front of Congress. So this looks like, to me, it looks like trying to placate the public. It looks like appeasement, which is very unfortunate. But again, this goes to the concept of the mass media via MK Ultra to the public. And so we'll ask our guest about that. So Cathy O'Brien has been speaking out for over 35 years on her experience in MK Ultra mind control and healing from it. Cathy was used on a White House Pentagon level until 1988, when intelligence insider Mark Phillips lifted her and her daughter from Washington, D.C., human trafficking swamp, and empowered them to reclaim free thought, self-control, and inner peace. Today, Cathy provides insight into how mind control works, affects us all, which is what we're going to talk about, and reminds us of our birthright to reclaim free thought, free will, strength of spirit, just as she did through easy to self-apply methods she used in PTSD, Time to Heal. And her website I've put up on my Patreon and locals already, and she has a locals as well. And her website is trance-formation.com. And she has a number of books up about that. And we were actually speaking at the same conference with Team America Iowa a while back. I was the opening speaker. She was the closing speaker. So I'm finally glad to get her on. So welcome, Cathy. Glad to see you, and thank you for your patience.
Good to see you too. Thank you for having me on. It's great seeing you again.
Well, I apologize for taking so long to get you on. I apologize again for having to leave before I got to hear your speech, but I heard great things about it. So please accept my pardon there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'd like to, before we get into what MK Ultra has become, I'd like you to go through your history and your story. But before you do that, I know that all your literature says that you were going to testify before Congress, but there are no records of that. And I'm not trying to ambush you or anything, but I'd just like you to, because nobody knows better than me how the government lies. But I just wanted you to explain that anomaly for the audience, please.
Yes, my 1995 testimony for Congress was censored under national security. Bill Clinton was president at the time and was doing some supposed MK Ultra hearings. And because my testimony involved so much information on the Clintons and their relationship with George Bush Sr. and this globalist agenda, child sex trafficking, drug trafficking, human trafficking, the evidence that was presented is so overwhelming that national security was invoked on that testimony, and it's been buried. It was released in book form in Transformation of America and distributed to all members of Congress. It was distributed by Democrats and Republicans alike to make sure that everybody had the information that was suddenly being censored and buried. How I wish that information had been brought to light the way it should have, that it wasn't buried so deeply under national security, because if that information had come out, we wouldn't be in the position that we are today. Child sex trafficking would not have reached this proportion of being the most lucrative business in the world, probably in all of history. Um, it's absolutely horrific the number of children who have suffered because national security was invoked on that testimony. Nevertheless, I've been speaking out for over 35 years on MK Ultra and healing from it, and I'll continue to do so because so many people now are awake and aware to how mind control is being used on us all, how we're all being manipulated by our knowledge base. And the Epstein files are just one thread that we can be pulling to unravel the whole tapestry of this globalist agenda. For anyone who wants to look into MK Ultra further, the MK Ultra files have been declassified for a year now, and they are available to anybody, thousands of pages right there. And it just astounds me, Jeffrey, why in the world my testimony is still buried under national security when the MK Ultra files have been released. You know, it's absurd, but nevertheless, I'm going to continue speaking out because knowledge is our defense against mind control, and people need to understand fully what in the world is going on these days so that they have a defense against it and stop cooperating with media repetitive narrative and being taught and told what to think rather than, researching and thinking things through for themselves.
No, that's a great point. And I can tell you, I can confirm, because I was an intelligence officer for so long, that oftentimes things are classified to cover them up. They don't really need to be classified, but it's political. And I would suspect, and so I've also published the links to the MK Ultra stuff on Patreon. You're right, it was released a while back. But because your testimony hits the Clintons very personally and people very personally, because what you see released in the MK Ultra files is very general in that they've declassified it, but I don't think it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it isn't really going after anybody. And of course, when it's a president or a vice president, they're going to invoke the presidential privacy clauses as well. That's why I think. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was deep in the Washington, D.C. swamp among these perpetrators that steal elections and use drug and human trafficking across open borders to fund their globalist agenda, and who are using mind control to usher it in. And how I got used on a White House Pentagon level was a more natural process in my life's experience. I was born in 1957 in Muskegon, Michigan, to a multi-generational incest-based family. My father was sexually and ritually abused. My mother was sexually abused and trafficked to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. These secret societies is where the secrets on mind control are being kept. And my father's sexual abuse began in infancy before I could think to know what he was doing was wrong. But my brain knew it was wrong and shut down neuron pathways around the trauma and repressed it deep into the subconscious mind.
And that makes
The
perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. What's the? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't think the statistics reporting incest are correct, because last time I saw they were very low. But from as a Christian chaplain, as I've worked with lots of folks, they seem much higher. Do you have any insight into that?
Absolutely, because the pedophile agenda is a mind control agenda, and it's been allowed to go on for a long time, ever since we imported the Nazi and fascist scientists into the US in the wake of World War II through Project Paperclip. People can research that for themselves. With them came the formula for mind control, and as quickly as that formula was brought in, the knowledge, our birthright information on mind brain function that would be our defense against mind control, that shows the devastating effects of childhood sexual abuse on the human mind. All of that would have been known, but all that was buried under national security, withheld from the mental health community, education system, and society as a whole, so that they could perpetuate an attitude of that pedophilia is a sexual preference. It is not. It is a mind control agenda. And it's because of our brain's natural response to trauma, shutting down neuron pathways and creating compartmentalization of memory. Without the neuron pathways firing properly in our conscious mind, we're highly suggestible and easily led. So ultimately, they're doing everything they can to shut down neuron pathways in the brain using trauma, and then manipulating the subconscious mind to create a compliant society, dumb us down ultimately to align us with artificial intelligence and with their nefarious criminal slave society agenda plan. And we've been conditioned for generations now for
That's
that,
real.
and
That's really
ignorant.
so. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and ignorant of our brain function. So MK Ultra capitalizes on that and is using that aspect.
That's fascinating, and I know that there were lots of drug use by CIA and torture. I mean, it looks, as I looked at it, I was like, this can't be it. But yeah, it is. They were just seeing what happens. So I posit, in fact, it's in my opening, is SSRIs and AI are used a lot of times through violent games, are used to activate folks like Ramos at Uvalde, because they all look so similar. They become trannies and everything. So that's one question. And then the other thing, I thought you said something very profound. Is you said something to the effect that this isn't just a behavior, this is a modification. I think that was really important, because that's something I've said a long time. It's not natural for a human parent to abuse their
Right.
human offspring. So could you say that again? Because I think it's important and profound. You're saying drugs and trauma and conditioning and propaganda are being used to blunt natural human reaction, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah, and sleep, food, and water deprivation. They're strong components because the brain doesn't fire properly when we don't sleep good. So if people are working 9 to 5, 5 to 9 to put food on the table that's been bioengineered and genetically altered to dumb us down and starve our brains, to keep our brains from firing properly. The water deprivation, look at the fluoride in our water and the chemicals that we're exposed to like that. Every bit of it is being deliberately imposed on humanity to make our brains fire less properly. We need to be using our brilliant minds. We need our brains firing at good. And having a defense against mind control is key to protect our conscious mind when trauma occurs, and to know that repetition is the most basic form of mind control. They use a repetitive media narrative to manipulate the subconscious mind. Everybody got a taste of that 2020 when mind control masked as a virus was unleashed on the global population. That was a perfect example. How many times did you hear mask up, social distance, get the injection? We were all being programmed in the subconscious. And unless you knew that, then you might be subject to compliance. I certainly didn't comply to with one bit of it because I recognized tactics of MK Ultra mind control right on the spot. And that's a choice to not comply. So I didn't, but many people did, and they got a taste of mind control then. And I think ultimately it's caused a great awakening, acceleration, because a lot of mistakes were made and the people were beginning to see the effects of mind control on society and how we were all being manipulated to accept a stolen election that was stolen right in front of all of us. Blatantly. The very first thing they did, fling that border back open to drug and human trafficking. They needed their funding mechanism back. So this has been going on my whole life. And because of the incest in my childhood and being trafficked to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge where the local politicians hung out, and because I was used in child pornography, um, my father was caught sending child pornography of me through the U.S. mails back in 1960. And a local politician that I'd been trafficked to as a little bitty toddler um, from the Masonic Lodge approached my father and told him he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would agree to sell me into MK Ultra mind control. My father did. He sold me into it. He received immunity from prosecution. And it's important to note how long our justice system has been compromised to allow for the proliferation of pedophilia to fulfill this mind control agenda. My father went on to become very wealthy with military contracts. That local politician was Gerald Ford. He went on to become the unelected president of the United States. And as his political career escalated, so too did my victimization in MK Ultra mind control until I was used on a White House Pentagon level. So the details of my experience, of course, are in my testimony, Transformation of America. And I encourage people to research further because the more you know, the more you see how child sex trafficking has become so pervasive and why people are allowing it to happen and how our justice system has been compromised to such a point that in spite of all the evidence, we're not seeing people like the Clintons and others involved in the Epstein files locked up. We got to
That is
have a system to prosecute them through.
that is so true. When I started whistleblowing, way back in the day, and I was saying, "Hey, Eric Holder's lying, the DA's lying, the DOJ about Fast and Furious," everybody's kind of looking, little old Special Agent Prather. Of course, now all that came out true. But I think what you've been saying for so long now, with the cover up of Epstein, with the massive Epstein class cover up, really rings true at a level that it never did before. Is that, and are you finding that to be true?
Exactly. And I'm reminding people that what they're seeing isn't new. What's new is that they're finally seeing it. And that awareness is our chance to make a difference. It's up to us. We can't wait on government to clean this mess up. The roots of this corruption run too deep and they're global.
And that is the line in the stand, at least for me as a Christian, for Team America, is child sex trafficking, permitting the kidnap, rape, torture, and murder of children through the Epstein class, Zorro Ranch, the island, to protect Israel or the CIA or the finders or whatever, is totally, or individual politicians, and totally unacceptable. But I think you're right. There is an awakening happening, even though this class continues to be protected. But I don't think people realize the depths of it And that's what's so important about your personal testimony is this begins at infancy for you. And then where does it go at childhood?
Well, then I was subjected to occult ritual after I was thrust into the project. I was taken to Mackinac Island, Michigan. That was the Epstein Island of its time. It's where these global perpetrators would meet and discuss how they could infiltrate the education system, music, entertainment, get the military training, video games out there into society so that kids would play video games and condition their brain that way to no consequence for actions. Um, and that's being subjected to that. I was raped numerous times at Mackinac Island, Michigan, all of which was filmed because these perpetrators don't trust each other either. They hold each other by the blackmail, so to speak.
Right.
They compromise other people with the blackmail um, too, which is why the blackmail vaults are such an integral key to exposing and unraveling this mess. Um, it certainly shows a lot about not only who's involved, but who's holding those blackmail vaults. I know for a fact that one of the main ones is under the Vatican. The Vatican blackmail vaults are extensive, which is why I think they shut down their archives as soon as the Epstein files um, were coming out. Um, but that's only just one of the vaults. There's more. But these blackmail vaults have been going on my whole life. And now we hear about the Diddy tapes, and this other. But it's the way they operate because ultimately, Jeffrey, there's not that many of them at the top. Follow the money and we get to the puppet masters at the top who are pulling all the strings, and those strings are usually blackmail over other people who have been compromised into cooperating with the agenda. And that's something that I wish people would realize is there's not that many people that are that blatantly innately evil. It's that the manipulation has been going on for so long that we've got to realize that aspect. It's like we pull back the proverbial wizard's curtain and find out it's just, a couple guys pulling levers on their media voice and their blackmail ops to make themselves look bigger than they are, when really we are by far the majority. We, the people, have all the power. That's why President Trump said he was returning power back to the people. It's because it's up to us. One person can't drain the swamp from the top down. It's up to us to drain it from the bottom up. And in order to effectively do that, we need to know where the roots of corruption are planted, why they've been planted, and what this agenda ultimately is all about.
Well, so Trump said that, but he hasn't cooperated with uncovering the Epstein files. Just like I've said something you've said there too, is we've seen photos and some documents, redacted documents, but there are videotapes of everything. Just like you said with your incest and that there are videotapes of everything, I'm sure, and we are not going to be allowed to see those. But you're talking about the pyramid. I'd say it's an upside down pyramid. You talk about the occult. So eventually, I think everything is satanically sourced. And I wanted to get your opinion on that. And I just noticed a very saintly attitude about you as briefly as we met.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm so excited that we've got the victory within us. We've been born with it, and having been around these perpetrators, they're a dark negative energy force. They're very low vibration. They feed off of low vibration, dark negative energy. They feed off of hatred, fear, division, trauma. That's their vibration. Their greatest fear is the strength of the human spirit, the infinite power of love. That is such a high vibration. They can't control it. They can't reach it. They can't even get there. That would be like darkness creeping in on light. It's a physical impossibility. They would not be able to manipulate humanity unless they use mind control. And that's why they use mind control. They use trauma after trauma to shut down our neuron pathways while they manipulate our subconscious, tell us what to think, what to do. When we're let outside ourselves to look to big government, big pharma, big tech, big cult religion to tell us how to live our lives, we're not going within, where and aligning with that divine within to gather the strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love to live our life's purpose. You know, because when we go within, that's our victory. It's game over. We win. We are high vibration there. We cannot be controlled there. So in that regard, Jeffrey, mind control is a spiritual warfare at stopping people from um, aligning with that, what we've been blessed with all along, and the resiliency of body, mind, and spirit. We've got the victory within us. And that's the news that I just keep spreading to everybody, because after 30 years of torturous robotic MK Ultra mind control, the fact that I could even heal and reclaim my self-control and inner peace is massive. But to be able to live my love, to be able to live my life's purpose, to be able to align with that divine is just the greatest joy. To show that anything, that whatever happens to us in life is not who we are. Who we are is still within us, divinely protected, waiting to be freed. And it begins with free thought, because we have to have that free thought. Without free thought, there's no free will. Without free will, there's no soul expression. Without soul expression, we lose our discernment of truth. We lose compassion for each other. We lose that choice to go within ourselves and align with the divine and live our love and gather that strength of the human spirit. You know, I know that from my life's experience, the absolute violation that it is on spirituality. And at the same time, I know that the only reason I was able to survive is because my spirit was always protected, always in a safe, loving space. If no matter how many near-death experiences, no matter how I was tortured, my spirit was in that safe, loving space, being protected. We have such divine protection over us, within us, and it will carry us through. We just need to remember that we've been blessed with all that and stop being distracted by the latest trauma, the latest perversion, diversion, the latest repetitive media narrative, the latest war, the latest assassination attempt, the latest school shooting, whatever it is distracting us. We need to break away from that, go within, realign with that divine, gather that strength of spirit, and start living our life's purpose, because that's our victory. That's where we win. They lose, and they know it. They don't want the information out there on how to reclaim free thought so that we can live our life's purpose. It's a
I think
victory by design.
I would say, as a Christian, it's victory in Christ, but I do agree totally with everything you said, in that you actually spoke in very technical terms, technical spiritual terms, what you were going through. I would call that the seduction of evil, where it begins with oppression. Everybody's oppressed, and that can lead to obsession with some oppression, which can lead then to infection, which leads to infestation of evil, which can then lead to possession. But I'm taking that from a Christian perspective, but I agree technically exactly with what you're saying. And I think it's really important, because what you're saying, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're saying we are constantly being inoculated to accept evil and accept perversion and accept pedophilia. And it's very subtle in many ways. For example, there aren't many good movies out there, but everybody's raving about this Michael Jackson movie. And certainly he's an incredible entertainer. And my kids were asking me, my birthday's come up. Hey, you want to go see that? Because you were talking about how good it was and how exceptional it was. And I was like, well, I guess, but it looks like he was a pedophile. Certainly, LASO thought, LA Sheriff's Office and everything thought so. But I guess, well, I mean, if we didn't go to any movie that where there was not a pervert and a pedophile, I guess we wouldn't go to any movies. But it is inundated in media, and so that's. I'm glad you're bringing that up. Is MK Ultra hasn't gone away; it is being exported at scale across America. And I like how you're saying we need to have a positive attitude and let go of all that.
And to understand too, Michael Jackson was MK Ultra, the same project I was, which was a sub-project Monarch. It's a multi-generational project, because it had been found in Himmler research that after 3 generations, any knowledge base, abuse base, or belief system becomes autogenic in the brain. And soul is stronger than genetics. We can override anything. And it was my understanding that Michael Jackson, around age 30, was attempting to expose the whole mess. I know that his sister, LaToya, had written a book and exposed MK Ultra, the child sexual abuse they all experienced. And I don't know to what degree Michael Jackson had any capacity for free thought to choose what he would do. But he was exposing the abuse as much as he could, so much so that they silenced him. And you might remember they masked him up to muffle his voice. The masks inhibit oxygen to the brain necessary for critical analysis free thought. They're used in MK Ultra mind control, especially on higher levels, very commonly. And so he was masked up, and he if he talked after that, he could only whisper, so they were programming him into silence because he was speaking out on behalf of the children. What would he have chose? I don't know, because he never was able to reclaim his free thought, free will,
No, he was very
to see
drugged.
what that would be.
He was very drugged up. That's how he died.
Yeah.
The drugs start with the Nazis. I'm sure you know that better than I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's a very interesting connection. Gosh, is there a glove connection between him and Tom Hanks with the?
Oh, wow. What a thought. What a thought. I have no idea. But it's a fascinating question. I think the most important aspect is to understand how trauma affects the neuron pathways of the brain. And it was found that
Yes.
harmonics affect it too. I'm sure you're familiar with the
Yes.
vibrational frequency affecting the firing of the neurons. And so the harmonics used in music were significant. Michael Jackson was one of the first to get the most sophisticated, high-tech harmonics in his music. So it made him a superstar, cash cow. They made a lot of money off of him, and the harmonics in the music would carry lyrics into the subconscious and manipulate the mind. So that's something we need to be aware of in all music, and realize that we need to be mindful of what we allow to go into our brains. Look how Britney Spears was used in MK Ultra by Disney, and promoting pedophilia so early on, and did all she could, or when she turned age 30, was shaving her head, trying to draw attention to the extreme abuse that she was under. How many times has she talked about MK Ultra, and just to be drawn back in? There's so many.
The whole Taylor Swift, all of them.
There you go. Yeah.
I think Prince talked about some of this.
Yes, he did.
And it's very common for those who don't know. Actors and singers are often recruited by intelligence agencies, and I also put a lot of this on the intelligence agencies, particularly the CIA. I think I go back to the Finders in particular. I think that was clearly CIA, and not all of CIA. There's good guys like John Kirkow, I think, although I was DIA, but the Finders, but certain units and certain special projects and then unacknowledged special action programs. So there's, I don't know if you know this, there's the classifications are confidential, secret, top secret. Then there's sub classifications for different projects that you have to be read into, special action programs, SAPs. But then there's also USAPs, unacknowledged special action programs, off the books, so that, you know, POTUS wouldn't be aware of those. A lot of people wouldn't be aware of those. And I think that's where a lot of this stuff falls under. I don't know if you're familiar with any of that, but that would go along with the classification cover-up that you were talking about.
Yeah, the intelligence insider, Mark Phillips, is the one who lifted my daughter and me out of the Washington, D.C. swamp in 1988. And Mark was a spook, so he wore every hat: CIA, NSA, FBI, Secret Service, whatever he needed to be. He was very high up in intelligence. He found our birthright information on mind-brain function. That's our defense against mind control, buried under national security. He was working to preserve the sanctity of free thought and was appalled to see how mind control was being used on the global population, how our constitutional values of freedom and justice for all were being eroded, blackmail ops that were being used to compromise our justice system, and how innocent people like innocent citizens like myself were being used and run through the State Department and other intelligence agencies. And by the time he saw little children being taken in and out of the White House, he decided he had to do something about it. And that's when he took action and lifted my daughter and me right out of the Washington, D.C. swamp, handed me keys to my own mind. That birthright information he found buried under mind control, he gave to me. And it was, not that Mark deprogrammed me, it's that he reminded me that it's within us all to heal from whatever we've endured in life, and showed me the steps how to do that. So I'm so extremely fortunate that of all the people in all the world, he picked my daughter and me. And what a hero he is to all of humanity, to go to such lengths and such risk to expose this mess. He had many good friends in intelligence and in positions of government. We had William Von Raab, head of U.S. Customs back then, that was doing all he could to expose this mess. He was the Tom Homan of his day, in exposing the drug and human trafficking across open borders. And so there were a lot of good people that I was exposed to on high levels of intelligence because of Mark Phillips' affiliation with so many good people in his determination to start exposing MK Ultra mind control and releasing the information how to heal from it. Through me, I could release that information because it was my experience to heal with it. He could not release it because he was bound by laws of sedition. So we were able to accomplish a lot together in our the 30 years that he and I spoke out. And that was back in the day when the finders information was coming out. Ted Gunderson was exposing it. You probably remember that.
Sure.
Yeah. And
Ted,
there's just a lot of good people.
For the audience that doesn't know, Ted Gunderson was like the 5th highest up FBI agent who got onto the finders, who exposed it. And then he actually exposed every major crisis from Oklahoma City on,
Yep.
saying they were all government cover-ups. I've actually had Margaret Roberts on recently about Oklahoma City. Turns out everybody involved was a different government agency, even some German intelligence. But you said that Mark used different credentials and could switch credentials. And so I can confirm from being an intelligence insider that does happen. The CIA, for example, used to like to use DEA credentials overseas because we could carry guns in certain countries if we were Operation Snowcap, and so then they could carry so it was actual authentic DEA credential, even though they were CIA. And there's a few that just switch credentials like they're switching shirts. In fact, Have you ever seen the movie Spartan with Val Kilmer?
No, I don't watch many movies. So much of I'm so busy making a difference with what I know. Everything I know is from inside information, but I'm sure there's some
Well,
movies that reveal something out there, and I can imagine you've definitely got the eyes to see them and discern what's going on with them.
it's interesting because he's one of those high level agents that just changes creds, and he actually rescues
Wow.
the president's daughter who is being trafficked by the president. Uh,
Wow.
so, because I think your personal experience almost uh, gels with that,
Wow.
and he's really surprised when he sounds like he's really surprised when he sees the president was really trafficking her as well. Uh, and you had personal White House experience with both of the Clintons, I think.
Yes, the Clintons with George Bush Sr., Dick Cheney, the perpetrators I was exposed to are named in Transformation of America. And, people have been saying, aren't you afraid to speak out? And it's like, well, I've been doing it 35 years. There's a fine legal line to walk to be able to do it. And a lot of common sense that Mark certainly taught me that I'm still applying today to be
Yes.
able to navigate it. But ultimately, I have no fear of them. They got that the first 30 years of my life under MK Ultra. That's their vibration. I'm going to live the love I am. I'm going to stand by truth and just keep my vibration high. So I'm not going to not going to fear them, and I'm still here. I'm so blessed. I as long as I'm here, I'm going to live my purpose and keep bringing
No,
truth to light.
actually, they're afraid of you. People,
Yeah,
people,
they obviously are
people
with their
say that to me all the time. Aren't you afraid? I'm like, no, they're afraid of me,
yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
afraid of you. The powerful are always afraid of the free, always, and
Yeah.
their fear always manifests as anger, insults, and violence. Always, that is a truth. Um,
Yeah. And
uh,
their censorship is absurd, but it has its effect. People need information on mind control and healing from it, and um, to be able to overcome censorship is a constant effort to, it's not only truth is not only censored, it's diluted. Like there's free ebooks of my testimony all over the internet that's with altered information, promoting the new world order, the globalist agenda, promoting mind control and saying there's no healing from it. That's just it's cruel, the magnitude of the psyops that they continue to run, because they are scared. They're scared of truth. They're scared that people are going to remember their own power and stop complying with their illusion of power.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, you have a documentary film, which I've also posted the link to. You've got several books out that explain how to not only tell your story, but explain how for people to do that. So please um, tell us all about those.
Yeah, I've got a healing trilogy out. I'm very, very happy with PTSD Time to Heal are the methods Mark taught me. And I wrote them from the point of view that others can apply to themselves. It's like a little workbook. It's not about me, it's about all of us, what we've been blessed with, and how to access that and heal. So it's helping people globally heal from any level of trauma. And resolutions, which shows how to access your own subconscious mind and then cope with the reality of what's endured. And my most recent, Align with the Divine. There's so many survivors coming out right now that are using time to heal to heal from within themselves and use that birthright method. But they still wonder. They say, well, why do you smile after all you've been through? How do you keep speaking out? How do you why are you so joyful? And it's like, because I know the truth. We got the victory within us. And we're so it's so easy when we align with nature to ground back into reality and the senses the animals show us to bring us back to our own senses, that is all part of the necessary steps for taking, reclaiming our free thought so that we can um, realign with that divine within and have that spiritual absolute love that we can all live. And that makes all the difference. There's so many who have been ritually abused and they're scared of religious terms. And there's so many ways to say what needs to be said in order to bring them around to their own personal journey, their own truth, and their own uh, discovery that they've been divinely protected all along. That we always hear God wins. God won. He won by design from the get go. When we just got to remember that we're in the victory mode. We're here for a purpose. We're here to live that purpose and claim that victory. If we all shine our light at once, we're going to eradicate that darkness once and for all. We need to do that. It's such an amazing time to be alive. So I'm really excited about those. My other two books expose what I've been through. Transformation of America, again, is my 1995 testimony for Congress, details the different operations I was used in, who I was prostituted to and when, and access denied for reasons of national security tells marks in my journey through the corrupted justice and mental health system to help my daughter, who was medically kidnapped after a year of being free. She was medically kidnapped by the so-called Child Protective Services, um, which is just a catch net operation for those who have been trafficked. And having seen how that was structured um, when I was under mind control, because my owner, U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd, had an office in the Hoover Building to set up the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children as a catchnet operation and to activate the FBI to have influence over all local law enforcement by just invoking national security and then thrusting the kids into the system. So they medically kidnapped my daughter out of a hospital and took custody, and Mark and I fought, and we show where those roots of corruption are planted, what we were able to do, what doors we knocked down, who was there to help, what we can count on for um, any kind of help in our society, especially like how our sheriffs are constitutional to be free of the influence of the FBI. They don't have to answer to the federal government. They answer to the people. So, we've got that option. So access denied for reasons of national security shows a lot of those roots of corruption and is helping other people navigate the corrupted system. You mentioned Trance Movie, the Kathy O'Brien story on mind control, human trafficking, and healing the nation, and it shows how mind control is affecting us all. What's being done, what we can do about it. So, yeah, I encourage people to, look into those and research even further, because the more you know, the more you see. It's inexcusable that we allow this dark evil, this negative energy force to manipulate our minds and lives, our
Well,
governments and our children any further.
well again, I'm glad you're mentioning God because the one word you never hear in media, TV is Jesus. That you never try and think of the last time you heard that on TV. But you hear Satan, and then also you see CIA, FBI always presented almost always as the good guys. Very few negative portrayals are ever allowed to come out. I think that's part of all of that as well. But would you agree that the bottom of this is satanically sourced because it is occult based?
They use a lot of Satanism as a trauma base. It was found in Himmler research that the second most horrific trauma in the human mind is satanic ritual abuse, blood trauma. And so there's a lot of them that use that. Where do you draw the line on it? If just because they don't worship it and worship their own evil more, the fact is evil is evil is evil. Darkness is dark. It just, the point's the same. So, whatever we call them, some people want to call them aliens, some people call them demons. You call them what you want. The fact is, we got the victory within us, and it's inexcusable that we allow this dark force to even be on our planet, let alone manipulate us and traffic and harvest our children.
Yes, that's happening all the time. Be a parent, not a pimp, is something I like to say all the time. But you would agree with me that there is an awakening that has never before. They've never been so exposed as they are now.
Oh, absolutely. And they're scared too. And that it begins with free thought. People started waking up. This great awakening was so massive in 2016 that the sheer numbers of us overrode the rigged electronic algorithm in the voting machine to elect a president that was not Hillary Clinton in the New World Order. So then we President Trump showed us the swamp, drug and human trafficking, the child sex trafficking, the corruption started to all come to light. So then more people woke up. 2020, these perpetrators went all in to reclaim their power, used the mind control mask as a virus, and made mistakes. They told a good example of that, Jeffrey, is they told us to shelter at home. Shelter at home broke our routine patterns. When you break routine patterns, you have to think in new ways. If you're thinking in new ways, you're getting your brain to fire. You're opening neuron pathways in the brain instead of shutting them down. They needed to shut them down, and instead they made the big mistake, and people's minds started opening, and while they sheltered at home and they started seeing the satanic reversals on TV, where they were burning down our livelihoods and telling us, oh, that's a peaceful demonstration. But if we defended ourselves, then we were the evil ones. It was all this reversal. They saw how their kids had been indoctrinated in the school system, weren't even writing by hand anymore in the system. If we put writing by hand back in the school system, that will stop the indoctrination of children in itself, because the very act of moving a pen activates the logic, critical
Yes.
analysis part of the brain, and they'll learn how to think again instead of just be programmed what to think. But parents were seeing that. They were seeing they didn't know anything about our Constitution. And we're all global, conditioned for globalism and um, a totally different agenda. So it woke more people up, and this great awakening is so real. And as we're reclaiming our free thought, we're reclaiming free will, and realizing it is up to us. Awareness is the first step towards positive, necessary change, and it's up to us. We cannot wait on government to do it for us. Government's been doing it to us for so long that we got to just take back our own power. We've got to make the difference in our own community. Indeed, local action has national impact, has global impact, and it starts within each and every one of us, reclaiming free thought, free will, and living our life's purpose, remembering who we are and why we're here. We're all here for a purpose and a reason, and what a beautiful time to be alive.
Amen. That is all well said. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm sorry I didn't get to have you on sooner. And thanks for coming up to Iowa with Team America and working with Steve and the team and all
Oh,
the
yeah.
great work you're doing.
Oh, they're great work they're doing. Thank you for what you're doing. And yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, well, there is the very well-informed and survivor and saintly, I found her, truthfully, Cathy O'Brien. Met her at the Iowa Team America event. And so make sure that you check out all her material, because there's a lot of truth there. And just like my story, I think it has been verified now over the years as to be true. So remember, it didn't end with my firing by DEA for the Sinaloa cartel. It began. It didn't end with charging Flynn for intelligence reform. It began. It didn't end with CIA's Russia lies, Mueller's phony report, nor Pelosi's impeachment. It began. It didn't end with simultaneous election night blackouts in swing states. It began. It didn't end with corrupt Capitol cops sniping Ashley and torturing political prisoner patriots. It began. It didn't end with abandoning American children in Afghanistan while importing terrorists. It began. It didn't end with FBI false flags in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Texas. It began. And here and now, you arrogant and evil, foolish traitors and enemies, foreign and domestic, nothing is ended. You have awakened the American David and filled us with terrible resolve. Attention, deep state Dems, rhinos, Blantovan, Bolsheviks, Marxists, and Maoists, politicians, pundits, and pedophiles. Your masks are for morons, your needles for Nazis, your shutdowns for sheep. Surrender for slaves. We will never surrender. We'll war on you, our children will, and theirs, and in the end, we'll win. Boosted and betrayed, dumbed down and drugged up, the last of you screw tape scum will tear each other apart, and we'll rebuild our republic on your bones.